Do you want to learn how to optimize Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 on PC to achieve high FPS, stutter-free, buttery, smooth gameplay, all while maintaining amazing visuals? Well, congrats, you're watching the right video. What's up everyone, OG here, and as I mentioned, today I'm going to show you how you can maximize your FPS on Modern Warfare 2 as well as on Warzone 2, while still maintaining some beautiful looking graphics. I've seen so many optimizers on Twitter's posting so many of those, these are the best settings for this game, for Modern Warfare 2, these are the best settings to use, and blah blah blah. And I swear 90% of the time, they're just putting everything on low. And while technically, this will help you achieve the highest FPS, it comes at the cost of your game looking like absolute dog water butt cheeks. And if you're like me, I know you didn't spend a bunch of money on building a PC just for your games to be looking like something out of the 90s. Well, anyway, enough talking, let's get on with the video. As I mentioned, today I'm going to show you some settings you can change not only within the game itself, but also within Windows, within Nvidia Control Panel, and if you like, in your computer's BIOS. Let's get on with it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at some Windows settings. Click on your start menu, type in power, and you begin to see the power and sleep settings. Go ahead and click on that to open it up. Once it's open here, you'll want to click on this right-hand side, additional power settings. With the additional power settings window open, you'll want to ensure that you're selecting a high performance. Typically, balance is going to be the default setting here, so you just want to quickly switch that over to high performance. And then that's pretty much it. Go ahead and close and get out of there. Done with that step. Next, we're going to go back to our start menu. This time, we're going to type in game mode. You'll see game mode setting come up. Go ahead and click on it, open that up. In the game mode window, go ahead and switch on game mode. While you're here, click on Xbox Game Bar on the left-hand side. Go ahead and disable Xbox Game Bar. By default, Windows loves to turn this on, so just go ahead and go in here and switch this off. Next, you'll now want to go into your display settings. To do this, simply right-click anywhere empty on your desktop and click on Display Settings. Once here, scroll down until you find Advanced Display Settings. In here, make sure that you have your main monitor selected in this dropdown. For me, it is actually the XF270. And at the bottom, ensure that your refresh rate is as high as it goes. My example, it's 143 as I have a 144 Hertz monitor. I know a lot of people make the mistake of purchasing a fancy monitor with like 240 Hertz refresh rate, only to never actually change the settings, so their monitor is stuck running at the default 60 Hertz. Make sure you're not one of those people. Now this step is only really if you use Google Chrome. If you do, go ahead and open up Chrome, click on the three dots at the top right, click on Settings. Once in Settings, click on System on the left-hand side. Within System, you'll see Continue running background apps while Google Chrome is closed. Switch this off. By default, Chrome has apps that keep running in the background, such as extensions and some other processes. And you want to make sure that this is off, as Chrome can be a notorious RAM hog and you don't want it to be doing so while you're gaming. This will ensure that when you do close out of Chrome, it actually fully closes out. Next step, you're going to go into GeForce Experience if you have an Nvidia graphics card. In here, go ahead and click on the little settings icon at the top right. Under General, you'll want to switch off the in-game overlay. By default, NVIDIA is going to have this enabled. Just go ahead and turn it off. Now, if you use NVIDIA Shadowplay to record some of your footage or record clips, feel free to leave this option on. Otherwise, go ahead and switch it off and you'll get a slight boost to your FPS. Now, let's quickly talk about some settings you can change within your BIOS. And in there, there's really only 3 I recommend you adjust, as mistakenly changing or altering your BIOS can damage your system. BIOS settings will look differently for everyone depending on the type of motherboard you have. If you're not comfortable with changing anything in your BIOS, then it's okay to skip this step, but I do recommend you take the time to learn how to adjust these. In your BIOS, I recommend you enable XMP profile so that your RAM is actually overclocked to the speed it's rated for. For example, mine is 3600, so I will set the XMP profile to this. Once the XMP profile is enabled, look for an option called Infinity Fabric, otherwise known as FCLK. You will want to set this option to half of your RAM speed. For example, my speed is 3600, so I would set my Infinity Fabric to 1800. Lastly, in your BIOS, I would look to switch on resize bar if your GPU and motherboard support it. If it doesn't, it's no big deal. It's not the end of the world, as it won't give you a huge boost as a lot of people make it out to be. Now it's finally time to move on into your Nvidia control panel settings. These next few steps are obviously only for Nvidia graphics cards. Note that at this time, I am on Nvidia driver 52661. I have done multiple tests with this driver along with other drivers, old and new, including the newly released driver, but I have found that the best, most stable results are on version 526.61. If you're already on this driver version, then you're good to go and proceed to the next step. If you're not on this driver, then I recommend you use DDU, aka display driver uninstaller, to uninstall your current driver. Then download the 52661 driver and install it. I'll leave the download links for both of these in the description below. Now what you'll want to do is open up your registry editor. In order to do this, just type in registry editor in your start menu. Once open, you'll want to navigate to the top address bar here. I'll leave this in the description bar below so you guys don't have to manually type this in. You can just copy paste it. Once on this tree, you'll want to look for the option enable GR535. Double click on it. In value data, switch this to 0. By default, it'll be set to 1. Just erase the 1 that's in there and type in 0. Then hit OK. Go ahead and close out of your registry editor and you're done with that step. Doing this will let us use Nvidia sharpening for Modern Warfare 2, and in turn, it'll let us double sharpen to make it look more crisp, all while barely impacting your performance. Now let's open up your Nvidia control panel. In order to do this quickly, just right-click anywhere empty on your desktop and select Nvidia control panel. First thing we're going to do in here is click on Change Resolution under the Display section. In here, ensure that your resolution and refresh rate are set correctly. In my example, I am on a 1440p monitor, 144 Hz. If these are correct, then just look down at the bottom and select the Use Nvidia Color Settings option. By default, it's going to be the top bubble. Just click on the bottom bubble and then hit Apply on the bottom right. If you have multiple monitors like I do, ensure you click on each one and change the settings below. Next, let's click on Adjust Desktop Color Settings right under the Change Resolution. The only thing I recommend turning up here is the digital vibrance. Now, I recommend you change it anywhere from 60 to 70%. This is going to be personal preference, and it is going to be based off of the monitor you have. Go off of the reference images that you have on the right-hand side here. Click on each one as you're adjusting the slider to make sure that the colors are to your liking. Now let's quickly set up and enable G-Sync if your monitor supports it and if you haven't already. In order to do so, click on the Setup G-Sync option. In this option, check the first box, and then on these bubbles, if you stream, I recommend you enable for windowed and full screen mode. If you don't stream or if you only have a single monitor, feel free to just leave it on enable for full screen mode. Under the select display you would like to change, ensure that your main gaming monitor is the one highlighted. Lastly, in the third step, check the enable setting for selected display model, and then just hit apply at the bottom right. You now have G-Sync enabled on your monitor. Now let's head over to the Manage 3D Settings option. Click on Manage 3D Settings, and on the right-hand side, you'll see two tabs, Global Settings and Program Settings. Under Global Settings, scroll down until you see Shader Cache Size. Go ahead and click on the drop-down and select 100 gigs. Hit Apply down at the bottom right after doing so. Next, you'll want to click on the Program Settings tab. In the drop-down, select your Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, aka COD.exe application. If you don't see it on this list, simply click the Add button, then click Browse. Navigate over to your Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 installation location. For me, this is my install location as I installed it through Steam. Once on here, click on COD application.exe and hit Open. This will now let us adjust the settings for this. Now that we've selected Modern Warfare 2 under the dropdown, we can adjust the settings for it. The very first one will be image sharpening. This is what we enabled when we did that registry editor tweak. This will let us to double sharpen the game to make it look more beautiful and less grainy. In here, go ahead and switch this to on, and then these are the settings that I use. These are personal preference, but I do recommend you use these as they're pretty universal. For sharpening, go ahead and set it to 0.6, and then ignore film grain, 0.75. Feel free to adjust this as you like. You can always come back here and adjust it. You just have to restart your game every time you do to see the difference. Once you've done that, go ahead and scroll down, and under Monitor Technology, select G-Sync Compatible. Under OpenGL Rendering GPU, select your GPU, in my case an RTX 3080. Under Power Management Mode, select Prefer Maximum Performance. Under Preferred Refresh Rate, select Highest Available. Under the first texture filtering, turn that off. Under Texture Filtering Quality, select High Quality. Now, you could select high performance and gain about 2 to 3 more FPS on average, but your game will look a little more rough, especially around the edges of textures and shadows. Trilinear optimization, go ahead and turn that on. Threaded optimization, turn that on. Vertical sync, turn that on. Now, yes, we are going to enable vertical sync within the control panel, but have no fear, as VSync will never actually enable. And before everyone starts commenting on how G-Sync and VSync increase your latency and give you higher input lag and blah, 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 please take the time to educate yourself on how G-Sync and VSync actually work, especially when they're both enabled and working in tandem. Blurbusters, the actual pros who have a bunch of fancy technology that can actually do these testings, have a great article published on their site if you want to learn more about how G-Sync and VSync work and why you should have them on. If you want the quick TLDR, having both of these on in the Nvidia Control panel will practically prevent your game from tearing. In turn, this will help it feel super buttery smooth. The added latency / input lag that people talk about that is introduced is super minimal, that you won't even notice it. If you don't believe me, read that article. And trust me, the tearing that will occur by you having both of these options off will negatively impact you way more than any extra latency you will experience. Once you've changed all these settings, hit apply down at the bottom to apply the settings. Now let's go over the configuration options file for the game. In order to find this, it's going to be in your documents folder. So go ahead and open up your file explorer and navigate to your documents. Once in there, you're going to see a Call of Duty folder. Go ahead and click on it. Click on Players. And you're going to see an options3.cod22. Go ahead and right click on this, select Cut, and then paste it to your desktop. This will create a backup of the file should you ever need it. Trust me, you more than likely won't, but it's always good to have just in case. Next step, you're going to want to download the configuration file that I have down in the description below. Basically, this is going to be this exact same file, but with my custom optimizations for it that will greatly improve your game. Once you've got it downloaded, hover over to that download location. For me, it was in my downloads folder, and simply drag and drop it to this Call of Duty Players folder. This will basically replace the old file that you had there before. Now, let's open up that file. In order to do so, right-click on it, select Open With, hit Notepad. What you'll want to do, there's only one option here that you're going to want to change, and that is all the way at the bottom. Scroll down to the bottom until you find Thread Count for handling the job queue. It's going to say Render Word Count 0.0 equals 8 / -1 to 16. This 8 is the only number you're going to change here, and it is going to be dependent on how many cores your processor has. If you don't know how many cores your processor has, there's a quick way to figure that out. Simply open up your task manager, click on the performance tab, and click on the CPU. In here, you'll want to look at the right hand side. There's going to be a cores option. For me, it says 8. So that is the option that we're going to select. It is a 1-to-1 ratio. If your cores say 6, then you will change this to 6. Whatever you change it to, make sure it matches the amount of cores. Once you've done that, click on File, Save, and that'll save the file. Now it's time to finally launch your game. Go ahead and click on the icon, open up your Modern Warfare 2, let it load up. If it starts installing or optimizing the shaders, let it do so. More than likely it will, especially if you change your driver version. You'll see the progress of that on the top left of the game once it launches. Once your game is opened up and the shaders are finished, we'll want to quickly go over our graphics settings. Now, the configuration file that you just finished doing should have automatically changed these settings to the best/optimal settings that I have found. But we'll walk through them and I'll show you what each option is and what it's set to, just in case it didn't. Under display, you'll want to use full screen exclusive. Now, I use OBS and I stream a lot, so that means I alt tab a lot, so I play under full screen borderless. If this is the case for you as well, feel free to leave it under full screen borderless. Under display monitor, make sure that this is set to your main gaming monitor. Display adapter, make sure this is your graphics card. Under VSync, make sure that this is off. Now, I know what you may be thinking. OG, we turned this on in the Nvidia Control panel, and you're right, but we don't actually want it to enable, which is why we have it off. Down here, we're not going to change anything. Custom frame rate limit, we're going to leave as is. Now we're going to go over to quality. For render resolution, make sure this is 100%. Upscale sharpening, we're going to use Fidelity FX CAS. Under the CAS strength, feel free to play around with this. You can set this all the way up to 100, but what I have found is that the higher you go, the more grainy your game looks. And it really doesn't give you any more sharpening past 60%. So anywhere from 60 to 100%, feel free to use. Anti-aliasing set to SMAA2TX. Anti-aliasing quality, set this to low. Video memory scale, go ahead and turn this up all the way to 90. If you get any issues with stuttering for some reason or FPS drops, feel free to turn this option down to 85, which is the default. That should help you with that, depending on the GPU and the amount of VRAM you have. Texture resolution, normal. Texture filter, high. Nearby level of detail, both the near and distant, set to low. Clutter draw distance, short. Particle quality, low. Particle quality level, normal. Bullet impacts and sprays, I like having this option off, but you can feel free to turn it off if you like. You won't really notice any impact to your FPS. Shader quality, this is a big one. You want to make sure that this is set to low. Having this on medium or high will greatly reduce your FPS. And I'm talking about 15 to 20 FPS less. Tessellation off. Terrain memory max. On-demand texture streaming, turn this off. This can cause you to kind of lag a bit in game if it starts to try to download the textures in real time as you're playing, especially for Warzone. Streaming quality, normal. Volumetric quality, off. Deferred physics quality, off. Water caustics, off. Shadow map resolution, normal. Screen space shadows, off. Spot shadow quality, medium. Spot cache, make sure that this is set to high. This, if it is not on high or ultra, will cause you to stutter. So make sure it is at least on high. There's really no need to go to ultra, so I recommend you just put it on high. Particle quality, low. Ambient occlusion, off. Screen space reflections, off. Static reflection quality, low. Weather grid volumes, low. Nvidia reflex low latency, on. Now, on plus boost is an option you can use if your CPU is a bottleneck. Now, the quick way to tell if your CPU is a bottleneck is by running that benchmark. Remember that benchmark I had you run at the very beginning of the video? Look at the bottleneck percentage for your CPU. If it is above 30 FPS or 30%, I'm sorry, feel free to set this to on plus boost. If the bottleneck percentage for your CPU is not above 30%, then just leave this at on. Depth of field, off. World motion blur, off. Weapon motion blur, off. Film grain, off. Under view, FOV, this is personal preference. I like having mine at 100. Feel free to play around with it. First person camera movement, make sure you put this at least. Nobody likes camera shake. There's no need to have it set to the default. But most of these are really all preference. And you're pretty much all set. Once you've done this, go ahead and run that benchmark and see the results. Once you've run the benchmark and compare the results, one thing you may notice is that your average FPS may be lower than before. If this is the case, then that is because enabling G-Sync and V-Sync allows Nvidia Reflex to do its full job and work to its max potential. In doing so, this automatically caps your game's FPS to just under your monitor's refresh rate. This is intentional and exactly what you want to achieve. This is what will help you achieve the minimal latency / input lag that everyone is always after, all while preventing your game from tearing and randomly stuttering due to FPS drops. Best of all, it will run super buttery smooth and crisp and be super responsive. What I want you to pay attention though are the low fifth and lowest first, especially that low first. That low first is the minimum FPS your game ever hit. That is the lowest it ever went. So when you were running that benchmark, if that low first was at 85 FPS, then that means that with all those explosions and all those gunfires, with all that ruckus going on, your GPU was giving you 85 FPS. So during those intense gunfights, you were dropping FPS to 85. Now, with these changes, these optimizations that we just went through this video, that low first should be much, much higher now, which means that during those intense moments, you won't drop FPS like crazy anymore. And your game will feel smoother because of that. But that's basically much it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it really helped you out. If it did, feel free to like, comment, share. If you have some time, feel free to, follow me on Twitch, subscribe to my YouTube. I play a lot of Call of Duty and I mess around with the game a lot. And anytime I find something that'll make the game better, I'll make sure to post it and share it with you guys. Thanks for watching.